outward trappings to continually change, but be the same thing. He wants actual revolution to happen. And he knows to have that happen, there must be an internal shift of who and what we are, what we're driven by. The Spirit must come alive within us. And that's what we're looking at here is in chapters 5 through 7, Jesus says this is what the kingdom of heaven looks like. The citizens of heaven, this is their character. So you can look at these things and decide if you want to be a citizen of heaven. One of the problems we have in America is that we think of heaven a lot of what we like. We are not taking heaven the way God has it, right? And so what happens is because it's presented to us in our media and we take our media far too seriously, we think heaven's a lot of like what we want. But it's not. Heaven's a lot of like what God is. And we must mold ourselves to that. And what we're doing as we live our lives down here is we're deciding, do I like heaven? Or do I like what I like? When it's contrary to heaven. Right? And so what Jesus does is here in chapters 5 through 7, he lays out this is what heaven's going to be like. And so it's a good, you should really honestly, read these passages. Because if you don't like this, you don't want to go to heaven. Right? There's a lot of people who just assume they want to go to heaven, but there's a lot of people who don't want to go to heaven. They just don't know it. Right? And so because when they're given the choice of heaven, they'll consistently and always choose hell. Now they call it heaven, but you can call it anything you want. It is what it is. And what is heaven but to know God and to have a relationship with him? What is hell but to be separated from that and just live in God's wrath? There's a lot of people who continually every day say, no, I would rather live in God's wrath than live in his heaven. I like to follow this, not that, right? And so this is a great passage because what it does is it faces us with the kingdom of heaven, the citizenry of heaven, and it says, do you want heaven? And it's a great bracing truth that we must all come to. And so let's jump in. We're right in the middle of the Beatitudes. We're in chapter 5, starting in verse 6. Jesus is looking at the inner qualities, and basically what you'll find in these inner qualities are people who are more interested in others rather than self. This hurts me. I'm not always like this. And when I look at this, to be like this, you just have to be more interested in other people than you. Your conversations, do they all hinge around you? Because you're the most interesting. I mean, you are the most interesting person in the world. But, does that mean the conversation has to last that way? And I think I'm the most interesting person in the world. Can we all agree on that? No. Man, she just totally batted me down. So, but, what you'll find is the people here, they're not looking out for what's theirs. They're looking out for what's God's. Right? And so let's look at this. Verse 6. Blessed, oh, how happy are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Now, think about this. Oh, how unhappy are those who just don't care for righteousness, for they're always going to be hungry and thirsty. They'll never be satisfied with life. Man, that's kind of, when I look at this, what Jesus is saying is, hunger and thirst, this is, again, always, in this first world wonderful country we have, there are some things that are communicated in the scriptures that are, we've got to learn to, well, let me just talk about it. First of all, we're not that hungry and thirsty often, right? When they made us build this building, the hall was so long, they said, you've got to put a water stopover down the hall. It literally is so far down there that you have to have a drinking fountain, right? Because apparently people would die if they started on one end of the hall. They'd be in that desert crawl. If I could just, get to the high school. But luckily, they can stop off and get a drink. so, so we live in a world, and most of our eating is stuff that we don't need, right? And so understand this. They were acquainted with hunger and thirst. They understood that if they didn't get enough food or they didn't get enough water, they were going to die. It was so prevalent with them and in their lives that they were faced with it virtually every day. They lived in this place. When you go camping, it's good. Everybody should go camping, hiking for days, right? Because you're faced with this. You don't have water fountains, and if you drink out of the water, sometimes you'll get sick and whatever. So what you'll find in camping is you got two things. You sweat, and then you try to get food and carbohydrates within your body, right? That's what you're trying to do when you camp. And virtually most of your day is taken up with these two things, right? And you need thirst, and you'll realize you've got to go buy, water pills or get a filtration system or what. And what you'll find is your day will be, especially if it's a good, arduous hike, your day will consist of where's the water, and I hope I got enough food, right? That's what you'll do. Now, what Jesus is saying here is you should be that concerned about righteousness, is that you're driven by. You couldn't get from this end of the hall down to the other end of the hall without thinking of exercising and being righteous. Now, what does that mean? That's a good, question. Is it kind of hot in here? Hey, Errol, would you put on the circulation? Yeah, thanks. You guys are going to go to sleep here anytime. I pretty soon it's just going to be like this mess. Now, righteousness. Think of righteousness like this. The right attitude and actions toward God first, man later. Right? That's what Jesus is saying. You've got to have the right attitude and actions with God, and then with man, and this needs to sustain you. Now, I'm going to address, some of you are new to the church. You're new to Christianity, and you come in, and when I say righteousness, right, attitudes and actions toward, God and man, a lot of you are struggling with just making it through one day to the next. You've lived lives in such a way that your life is actually a day-to-day struggle. And it's not because of anything outside, it's because choices you've made, right? And that's okay. You're welcome here. We're grateful you're here, and it's wonderful, because what Jesus is saying is he's saying, okay, what I want you to do is understand that even before that water and the water you drink and the food you eat, you need to want to do the right thing. Above all things, do the right thing. Learn to do that, because then you won't be scraping and trying to get yourself out of all the messes you've got yourself into, right? And there's a lot of people in our society that, even though we have so much riches around us, are constantly having to claw and fight for just to get from one day to the next, not because you're being persecuted for righteousness, but merely because you've made bad decisions. And those bad decisions come home to roost because you've loved other things more than God, right? And so this is fairly obvious. And if you're in that situation, you know you're in that situation. And what Jesus is saying is to you is this. He's saying, now listen, you guys, just understand you've got to change your priorities. Those things in which you think you need to use to get through the day, replace that with righteousness. Now that's not easy, and you can't just do it. You can't hear me and say, oh, okay, what was I thinking? I'll do that tomorrow. Right? It's a hard thing to do that. But the minute you know you need to do that, you can go to God in prayer and say, Lord, change me. And wonderful news is this. He loves to redeem. He's going to change you. He's in the process of it. He loves you so much that he sent his son to die for your sins that you might change. And he might have that place in your life. Right? So, that's here. And what you do is when you recognize that, you go to Jesus and you say, change me. I need to quit living for, the drugs or for the job or for the, whatever it is outside of God. You got to quit living for that stuff and live righteously. Bring God back into perspective. And when you have God in perspective, then you'll have other people around you in the right perspective as well. Now, there's some of you, like myself, who've been in church for a long time. And what this is going to mean is different. It's one thing to understand our foibles of unrighteousness. Like you don't have to explain to me that when I'm impatient in the car, it's ugly and I need to quit, right? It shows that I'm a sinner. It shows that I think I'm the center of the world. Everybody ought to drive the way I want them to drive. And there's just, it's an impatience within my heart. I mean, I know that, right? And I know that's wrong. And I try to repent of it. I at least confess it a lot, right? Now, that's fine and good. And most of us who are in the church, most of us in the church know those different particular foibles that are in our life that have been screwing up. But here, let me suggest this, is the church as a kingdom and us as more mature Christians should be broadening our horizons of understanding of what righteousness is. Because, and I'm going to talk about politics, right? Because what do you get mad about? Religion, politics, and is there anything else? What's the third thing? Isn't there some other thing? I can bring that up too if I think about it. But politics, and I'm constantly, I was just reminded of it again. I was at a pastor's conference. I go over to, not a conference, but a meeting over to Seattle, the Northwest Calvary pastors get together like once every other month, and we just kind of sit around, pray for each other, have a little worship time, kind of talk about issues and stuff like that. And one of the things that was brought up was that except for one Hispanic guy, we're all white, right? When we get together, we're a bunch of white guys. And if you look at our churches, they're by far and large white, except Christian, and he left. So we don't even have Christian here anymore. So we're a bunch of white conservative people in the church. It's a problem, right? Some of the younger people are getting to be more liberal. I won't point them out. And so no, but we're like that. But there's a problem with this. There's a problem with this, and I realize it. And as we were talking, because in the meeting, they're like, we recognize that as pastors, and we realize, it's hard in Squim, right? Because there's not a lot of minorities in Squim. Apparently, this is where white people go to retire. There's just a lot of white people around, right? Come on, it's true. So anyway, so I'm off the hook. The rest of them, though, they have no excuse over in Seattle. No, we were talking, and they were like, yeah, that is a problem. We need to face that this is an issue because, we're still dealing with this in the nation, right? We're still dealing with race riots. Just even this last week, right? So there's an issue in our society. And one of the, and so we were talking about this in the pastor's meeting, and, some of the guys were saying, well, what you need to do is be friendly. Just start being friendly. Go say hi. Go, and that's true. And that does need to happen. And, but they were kind of saying this, and this is where I kind of disagreed with them, is that they were thinking that if we would just go be friendly and befriend them, it would change everything. But I don't think so. For this reason. We, as a church, not just this one in particular, but as the white Protestant church, have been somewhat blinded by what the government is supposed to do in God's sight, from what I understand in the Old Testament. And some of you who've been with me, know I've talked about this before, is that as I was reading through the Old Testament prophets, God was really upset with Israel because the rich were becoming richer, the poor were becoming poor, and he expected the government, not the individuals, the government to fix that, right? And and let me tell you, I am a conservative white guy that has guns on his wall, right? I'm as conservative. I want the government out of my life. I love the Second Amendment. And I was a cliche of white Christian America. And then I read that God cared about how the government enacted the playing field for the people. And I kept running over this idea of justice. And then I started reading about it, and then social justice. And then I realized why all the black preachers are named Hezekiah, Isaiah, and all those preachers. You know why? Because they're talking about the same thing. That's why they're always talking about the Old Testament. And I used to scratch my head, and then I was going through it, and I'm like, holy cow. How come my white pastors never preached this? Because we're white. We don't think like that. And we think, and so this is my point with this, is that I realized that there was a whole gamut of righteousness that I totally missed because of my small sliver of, community. But there's a righteousness that God expects, a social justice that God expects. And when Jesus says hunger and thirst for righteousness, I used to just plant my flag in the abortion issue, right? I'd say abortion, this is it. I am righteous because I don't support abortion. And this, it's to me a stance that any Christian who understands who God is and that He creates the life that is within the womb, I do not know how anybody can get around this, right? And I think that we, as a political entity, should plant our flag. That is a righteousness we should stand on, die for, go to the ropes on, because it's, and it drives me nuts that just even the thinking behind when I hear them say, well, that's her body, you can't tell her what to do with her body. When I hear that, I'm like, it doesn't have her DNA. I understand that they don't think that it's life, but it's not her body, because it doesn't have, everything in my body has my DNA, right? I'm sophisticated enough to know that everything in my body has my DNA. That person in the womb of that woman does not have her DNA. It is not her body. By definition, it is not her body. She doesn't. And so I'm like, can you just listen to yourselves? You don't want me telling you what to do, but yet you're taking ultimate control over this other life. Don't you see? And so now I can take that and I can feel very righteous about that because I plant my flag in there and I think, can't you see this? Come on. Be consistent. But that's not all the righteousness there is in the world. There's another righteousness about the plight of the hopeless poor. And because, I'm not a really ambitious person, but I've always known that if I work hard and I put my, nose to the grindstone, and I know that I'm going to go places. I don't think big places, right? But I'm going to go somewhere. But there's two largest segment of people in our country that does not believe that. They don't believe they're going to get anywhere. They're hopeless. And I can't just say, well, be like a white guy like me, and you'll have more hope. I can't say that. I have to realize they don't have that for a reason. They've got a sin nature just like I have a sin nature. You'll find that you have an unbelievable reservoir of hope. Have you ever thought about that? How much you hope that things are going to change? And, when you get married, it causes you to fight. You hope the other person's going to change, right? And that goes on for a long time. And they don't. And it causes, but just in that, you see all this reservoir of hope. And then when I look at a large segment of people in our country that don't have that, it's not there. I realize our society in some places is not righteous. And just like I plant my flag over here, I should plant my flag over there and say, that's not right. God doesn't want people to be raised in a hopeless environment. Now, again, where I'm at, and my parents were never rich. My parents were not positioned in great places in society and whatnot, but I had opportunities. There's a lot of people who don't. They just don't. And what I realize is I got a hunger and thirst for righteousness within my society, as much as I do for the unborn, as much as I do to, not see people enslaved by drugs, as much as I need to have a hope to clean up the environment, because it is God's world and we should take good care of it, just like we want people to take good care of ourselves. I just can't look at a small, and I'm talking to us Christians who have been around long enough, we should know better. We should not be being fed our righteousness by political powers. And that's the only thing that I can understand as to why I miss that whole particular place of society that doesn't have hope. But I was oblivious to it, blind to it, just thinking, just be like me. Self-righteousness. I can do it, you can do it. And I had no ability to be like Jesus and say, oh, they can't. I need to fix that if I can. I need to die for them just like I need to die to myself, just like I need to die for my family, just like and so that was a little bit of an awakening for righteousness in my life. As Christians, listen, you may be getting beat up by unrighteousness in your life, and again, Jesus wants you to understand that you have to start your view of what is right, your view of what you live for, what you die for, where you plant your flag, what hills you die on. It needs to be for righteousness. You need to look at it so much so that it is as much to you as the food you drink and the food you eat and the water you drink. It's that important. I mean, do any of us go find things we don't like to eat? I don't like that. I think I'll eat that. I don't like, except for when I'm trying to lose weight. That's the only time I do that. But think of how much time and effort we spend on our food and drink. Now think if we were to take all that energy and live for righteousness like that. And again, this needs to be the Spirit of the living God within us. If the Holy Spirit isn't in us, driving us, this isn't going to happen. So, but this is a character of the citizen of heaven. If you want to be in heaven, if you want to hang out in heaven, apparently it's going to mean that you care more about righteousness than what you eat or drink. That you care that the attitudes of your heart and with God and with people and the actions that you have, it's more important than eating. You don't eat and then do that. You do that and then you eat. Right? And so, that's just one. Let's go to the next one. Verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Man, this one just kicked my butt yesterday. I was reflecting on this, and I was realizing what an unmerciful person I am. I mean, I'm generally a nice guy, right? And I don't lose my cool. I think I'm cool, okay? Let's just get that out in the open. Now, let me school you on cool. This is what some people think cool means hip. As a matter of fact, David just left. That's what he thinks. He's wrong. He's not here. Let's talk about it. No. I don't think I'm particularly hip, although I may be. I'm just cool as in I don't lose my temper. I don't get really upset. I'm just kind of real steady, right? I'm not hot. I'm not cold. I'm just kind of cool, right? Clint Eastwood, right? Cool. Not hip, just cool, right? So there mine. So, but what I realized though is that even though I'm not upset with people really bad all the time, and, even though I'm not like that, there is a righteousness I expect out of people. And I get internally uptight and upset with them when it's not met. What Jesus says is you've got to be driven by mercy. What's mercy? Not getting what you deserve. It is not. Remember the game? I was remembering this morning. Remember the game you played with your big brother? This is what I played with my big. I'm an idiot because my big brother was 6 years older than me, and I'd always play mercy with him. Like, how is this going to work out? And, you'd grab hands, and then, and then by the time you'd go, oh, mercy. That's not what we're talking about. It was just a cruel, horrible game. That's kind of what we do, though, isn't it? Don't we want the power over people? We just want them to do the right thing, right? But we just want to say, come on, say mercy. Let me spread mercy. We can't do that. What this means is that you're full of forgiveness. You don't expect people to do the right thing. You are so full of mercy and graciousness and forgiveness that you need to spend it. You've got too much to deal with, and you need to get it off your hands because it's driving you crazy. So when people sin against you or they're unrighteous, you're like, oh, good, I can spend some on you. And you start shelling out forgiveness because you want to. Like, I'm glad you sinned against me because this will give me a great opportunity to show what Jesus is like. And I've been looking for one. And, if you could have just sinned a little bigger, it would have helped me out more, but I'll take what I can get. I do not live like that. That is not me, right? In my car, I am not merciful. Most of you would have your licenses taken away if it were up to me, because you do not drive up to my standards, and if I could take them, I would, especially if you can't go around a roundabout. You're out, right? Yield does not mean stop. So, I am not merciful. I am a little g God of wrath in that roundabout, right? And I show my wrathful beep, beep, because I got a bug. What am I going to do, Oh, don't make the bug mad. But it might be poisonous. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so I just, and I was thinking about how, we've been building a house and we've been shelling out money and man alive, I am not looking to forgive people. I am looking for righteousness in other people. I'm excusing it. I'm looking for mercy with my problems, but with other people's problems, I'm looking for righteousness, right? And it's got to be flip-flopped in the kingdom of heaven. We've got to be people who are just looking to spend mercy on other people. Now, you can't get there by being the little engine that could. You cannot do that. The only way we can give mercy is by getting mercy. You go to Jesus and you confess your sins. And you say, Lord, I am like this. You ever get tired of saying the same sin? Don't. You go, and if you're still that person, if that's still a sin in your life, confess it again. And then again tomorrow. And don't ever become comfortable with that sin. Let it drive you to your knees to where God says, okay, yeah, I forgive you. The next day he says, I forgive you. And the next day he says, yeah, I still forgive you. And sooner or later, if you have any honesty within you at all, you will be at the feet of Jesus saying, God, I am such a sinner. He's like, yeah, I know. Now go treat other people like that. Like you're a sinner, not they're a sinner. Go restore them. Go spend mercy on them. It's not excusing sin, right? And you don't go help other people sin, but you just don't demand righteousness for yourself. It's not that you're naive. It's not that you become a doormat. It's not any of that. I'm not suggesting any of that because we don't see that in Jesus' life. But what he's saying is just you are a person of mercy. People know that when they come to you and they say, man, I shouldn't have done that. That you will immediately say, okay, great, thanks for, yeah, no problem. What are we going to do now? Right? You know, you can't forgive people who don't come and ask. That's their problem. But man, if people come to you, are you quick to give it? And not just say it, right? You know, like we all of us who have kids say sorry to your brother. Sorry. How many of that is us in the Christian, okay, I know I did wrong, but you're such a jerk that, you know, or just, that's not mercy, right? Mercy is understanding who you are so much so that you want to give it. And don't try to drum it up. You don't got it, right? You get this by going to Jesus. And so, if you're not merciful here this morning, then you need to go and confess and keep confessing. You need to, maybe you don't even see your sin. Maybe you think you are kind of righteous in and of yourself. And you need to go to Jesus and say, would you show me? I apparently don't get it because I'm not very merciful. When you get it, you're merciful. When you don't get it, you're not merciful, right? And so you need to go to Jesus and say, man, help me get it. And man, I tell you, now here's the thing. Oh, how happy are you when you're so full of mercy, you're just spending it on everybody. This is a weird thing. If I demand righteousness out of you, I'm going to be unhappy. If I will give you mercy, I'm going to be happy. And then I'm shocked when I'm not happy, and I blame it on you. I'm not happy because these people aren't righteous. I don't go to that church because they're a bunch of sinners. I don't like getting involved with this because, you know, they'll let me down. We become defensive. It's everybody else's problem. It's not victory. See, this is why Jesus wants to change the inside of you. Man, when you come to church not to be blessed and get what you want, but to give other people what is within Jesus, man, you have a great day at church, even if the pastor is really boring. It doesn't matter, or the music isn't what you want, or you don't think like that. You're just, it becomes, you're just happy because you want to give mercy, right? Oh, how happy are the people who just walk around spending mercy on everybody. Go to the bank. You got to go to Jesus to get that. Okay, verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Understand that when he says pure, he's talking about being single-minded, not being a good boy, right? And you'll if you're with me for very long, you'll hear me say that. God doesn't want you to be a good boy or a good girl. He wants you to be godly. It's different. Trust me. When we think of pure, when you think, oh, that's a pure person, we often think of tame, Little House on the Prairie pure. That is not what we see in Scripture. Jesus was not a good little boy. Jesus was a force to be reckoned with. And when you start looking at righteous people in the Scriptures, you start understanding that God's not looking for merely nice people that behave in our structure. And Isaiah, you know what his ministry was for 3 years? Streaking. That was his ministry. God says, show everybody your butt for 3 years. That's really what he's saying. 3. How would you like that? Like, okay, here's my sermon. You don't even like, some of you are like, you can't say that in church. It's in the Bible, for Pete's sakes. It was church. You're like, whoa, I don't like where this is going. Get the kids, get out, quick. Listen, God's not safe. Now, please don't come streaking next week. We'll throw you out. You'll make God's point, but you'll do it outside in the rain. Don't go and say, the pastor inspired me. So I just know somebody someday is going to take that and run with it, literally, and I'm going to be like, oh, crap. They'll be in the paper. Why'd you do this? Pastor Hans Bailey. Oh. So bad. Okay. Purity. Single-mindedly focused. Right? Let me come at it from this one. If you've been in church for very long, you've read these verses. It says, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Have you ever took that verse and just said, I am just going to watch things that are righteous, pure? Have you ever done that? You literally have to poke your eyes out and plug your ears. You can't live thinking that way. I remember reading this, and then one day I'm like, holy cow, I totally missed it. Because think of it like this now. Pure is in you just want to see God. You're not trying to be a good boy or girl. You just want to meet God today, somewhere, somehow. Now, think of it that way. Now think, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. So whatever you see, you're looking for God. And you're saying, where's God in this? How do I understand God more? What he's saying is, if you're single-mindedly focused, looking for God, you're going to find him. He'll reveal himself to you. But if, on the other hand, you're just running around like a critic, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, you may be all right, but all wrong. You're not going to see God. You're just going to see what you think's wrong. But God's like, no. I want you to see me in everything. Find me there. Learn to recognize me. Don't be trying to show. Listen, other people should see that we're not like them, not because we point it out, but because it's just so obvious. And it should be because it is a sweet smell to the Lord, not because we're just trying to show that we're different than they are. That is not our job. We do stand up for righteousness. We must be vocal. You must be loud at times as Jesus was. But Jesus didn't stand up and, well, except for religious people like me, and say, you stinking idiots. He did call the religious establishment that, right? And it wasn't just because, the whole organized religion thing, I just don't like organized religion. It's crap, right? We love organized religion when they build hospitals, don't we? When they help out sick people, when they do the work of God. We love that. There's nothing wrong with organization. It's a wonderful thing. It's just when they get organized to be in righteousness, then it becomes ugly. To become self-righteous, if that organization becomes self-righteous, we're righteous because we're like we are. That's a bad organization. But if we get together and we're organized to try to show what Jesus is like, what a great organization. And guys and girls who can actually organize the particular entity to do that is a wonderful thing. So organized religion, when everybody, you don't have to argue with them, but you don't have to feel beat up if they think you're part of the organized problem in the world. It's not true. They're being simplistic and naive. But when we look at being pure, understand this. What Jesus is saying is just look for God wherever you are. Look, try to find God. Be pure, be single-mindedly focused where you're at, that you might understand who God is, what he looks like, what he acts like, and engage him, see him, become like him. Even in things that don't try to glorify God, they can't help but glorify God because they're made in his image. And everything in this universe runs on physical and spiritual law that must bend its knee to Jesus Christ one way or another. And you will see God in everything that happens. This is what God doesn't like. Because when you do this, live like this, it's miserable. It's a horrible way to live. But man, when you live like this, it's freeing. It gives you strength. It makes you more of a person, not less of a person. This is a good thing. Right? Right there, you've met God. If you see God in that, you understand that. Right? And so this whole idea of blessed are the pure in heart. Don't think of good little boys and girls. Don't do that. That's good for down there, right? In the children's ministry. They do need to be good boys and girls. But by the time you're us, and you can actually comprehend what I'm saying here, you need to be more mature than that and understand God's not looking for good boys and girls. He's looking for people who single-mindedly love him, see him, understand him, respond to him. You'll see God. Others won't. And I find myself far too much on the critical side to where I just see why they're not like God. And I miss God altogether because I didn't see what was in there. So anyway, okay. Verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Now, certainly this means making peace between God and man. But it's more than that. And if you go back and you read this, what you'll find is this is a person that he's describing that counts other people as more important than themselves, or at least living for other people, or placing other people in front of themselves. It's just so hard. But this is the person, this is the citizen of heaven, is the person who tries to make peace. Why and where did we come into the place in Christianity where we are constantly trying to not make peace? So much so that we hate even agreeing with a non-Christian. I mean, how many of us, Mormons, right? They're a cult. They do not believe in the same Jesus we do. But you know what? They're for marriages staying together. I'm with them. I don't hate that. I like that. The, Buddhists, they're all for not becoming materialists. Probably a little too far. They want to be able to, anyway, I'm not going there. But a little too far. But you know what? I can agree with them. Why do we try to make ourselves not them when we can agree with most of it? Who are the people you listen to? The people you listen to are people who are honest, right? Really listen to. I mean, you can have people come and stroke your ego or tell you what you want to hear all the time. And if you do that, sooner or later you'll get tired of it because they'll just be pushing you into the same hole you keep running into. They're just like, let me help you there. But when you find somebody who's actually honest with you and they're like, no, that's going to hurt. Quit doing that. That's dumb. And you're like, oh, nobody ever told me that. We're like, well, we all saw it. We just didn't want to say anything. But quit. And when you quit, you're like, oh, that's nice. You want to go to that person, right? So if you constantly are talking with other people and all you're not trying to make peace with other people, you're just trying to make drama and bring contrast into life, division. You're not like me because of this. You're not like me because of... What are we doing? We're not making peace. They're not going to listen to us. We'll be so obnoxious that when we do have something to say, they'll be just like, well, you hate me. Why would I listen to you? Right? And for some reason, we as the church have got it into our heads that we change the world through boycotting. It's not so. We change the world through being like this. Right? This is who we are to be. Peacemakers. Now, understand, sometimes you won't make peace. As a matter of fact, Jesus will, near the end of his ministry, say, I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. Right? So it is not as if we will always be like this particular characteristic or that. But what he's saying is he's describing a person. Right? What you want to do is you want to read this, and this is who we are. Like, we should hate it that other people feel alienated from us, not love it. We should try to bring peace to other people's lives, not drama. We should try to bring other people and elevate them as people rather than pushing them down. It should just be our general makeup, is that we want people to be, loved, and we want them to feel important. I mean, this is the type of person who he's describing as somebody who is not taking their personality and beating everybody over the head with it. They're somebody who's meek, they're poor in spirit, they're full of mercy, they're pure, they're always seeing what's, again, you're going to get to these verses. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely. On my account, rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Right? You'll get it, right? Being like this doesn't secure that you're the most popular person in the party. Right? It doesn't at all. As a matter of fact, it may mean that you show up at the party and all of a sudden everybody hates you because you don't indulge in the things that they're indulging in because it's destroying their lives. And they'll feel guilty and you'll be the nearest target. Yay! Can I have a cocktail weenie? But so it may happen. I'm not saying that everybody's going to love you for this, but this is who we are. Other people can choose to be different. That's okay. But this is us if you want to be in the kingdom of heaven. If you don't want to be in the kingdom of heaven, if you want your rights, you don't want heaven. I mean, you ever thought of that? It's difficult being a person in America and a citizen of heaven. It's difficult going to Burger King and understanding the gospel. Get it? Because have it your way, but that's. Do they even say that now? Is that it? Crap. Oh, sorry. Doggone it. Okay, let me end with this. Three songs. I'm just saying 3 songs. Am I forgiven? Are you full of mercy, David? Everybody look at David. Never be my worship leader. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. The city set on the hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Okay, let me end with this. Being in church culture, I'm always dealing with this question, especially as a pastor and whatnot. What draws people to your church, right? Why do people leave? And a lot of times people will go and they'll say, well, they weren't friendly. Nobody said hi. Nobody, and we've got all these things. What draws people? Oh, we got a great worship team. Oh, our pastor is hilarious. I was expecting, but see, even that was funny. I'm saying, okay, we've got all these ideas that we think should draw people to church. We're super hip. We're these things. But this is what Jesus says. will draw people to us. If people are drawn to us because we're so friendly, and that's why they're drawn, and that's only why we're drawn, we're not doing it. Now, I don't want you to not be friendly. You should be friendly because these kind of people are friendly. But let me put it this way. Let's say somebody comes. This is what our community of Jesus followers should be, right? And let me tell you, I understand, I fail too. But the community that follows this will have people coming in, and even if nobody said hi to them, they would come back because they want to be a part of it. And they'll do what they have to do to get in there. That's the Jesus community. Is that our fellowship and our community, we're so much so about other people, which means that you're friendly, right? I understand that. But it's so much so that people are drawn not because of the worship or the teaching or the children's ministry or this or that or whatever. They're just like, look at those people. They're just super weird, but they're awesome, right? They don't act right, but it's a good thing. They're not like, they say they're not like. We don't say. They recognize it. We don't try to put it on display. We just are. Because we just love Jesus. We're full of mercy. We're trying to see him, not point out the wrong. We're trying to, these things. Let's have the worship team come forward. Lord, man,